unconditionally. I loved him in spite of whatever situation would cause me pain, and that was if he needed to be with someone else just to talk about philosophy. You're right, he didn't always, in fact, he kind of infrequently.
For decades, Linda Thompson lived with memories too heavy to share. She was there through Elvis Presley's highs, his heartbreaks, and the final years that shaped his legend. But now, at 75, she has finally decided to speak, and her words have fans all over the world speechless. What she revealed wasn't just a love story. It was a confession wrapped in pain, passion, and secrets. With that, her words have reopened a chapter many thought was closed forever. Join us as we uncover what really happened between Linda and Elvis. The night Elvis Presley shared a secret. Linda Thompson walked into a Memphis movie theater one night in 1972. She was 22 years old, fresh from competing in the Miss Tennessee USA pageant. Elvis Presley had rented the entire theater for a private screening, and through friends, she had received an invitation. Everyone in Memphis knew his name. He was not just famous, he was a legend who had changed music forever. But Linda had no idea that this single night would pull her into a world she could never have imagined. Elvis noticed her almost immediately. He turned his head, smiled, and gestured for her to sit beside him. Linda felt her nerves melt away. As he spoke, his voice was warm and welcoming. He did not treat her like a stranger or a fan. He spoke to her like she mattered. They talked through the entire movie, their conversation flowing easily. By the time the credits rolled, something had started between them. That night became the beginning of a relationship that would last 4.5 years. The early days felt like a dream. Elvis was charming, attentive, and surprisingly gentle. He was more than 10 years older than Linda, but age did not seem to matter because he made her laugh. Then he invited her into his famous home, Graceland, and introduced her to his closest friends. For a young woman from Memphis, this was beyond anything she had expected. She was now walking the halls of the most famous house in the city, trusted by the man everyone wanted to know. But life with Elvis was far from normal. Graceland was always filled with people. Friends, family members, bodyguards, and staff moved through the rooms at all hours. Elvis lived on his own schedule, staying awake until dawn and sleeping through the day. Linda adjusted to this unusual rhythm, even though it exhausted her. She wanted to be there for him. During those long, quiet nights, she began to see sides of Elvis that the world never saw. He could be playful one moment, joking and teasing, then suddenly withdrawn the next. His moods shifted without warning. Linda noticed that fame had left deep marks on him. He was trapped inside his own success. Even at Graceland, surrounded by people who loved him, Elvis seemed restless. He paced the hallways. He stared out the windows. He looked like a man searching for something he could not find. Linda became more than a girlfriend. She became someone Elvis leaned on when the crowds disappeared. Late at night, when everyone else had gone to bed, Elvis would sit with her and talk. He began to share things with her, things he said no one else could know. These were not small secrets, they were things about himself that he feared would change how people saw him. And then he asked her to keep these confessions hidden. Linda agreed. She promised him she would never tell. At first, it felt like an honor. He had chosen her to hold his truth, but as time passed, Linda began to feel the weight of what she had agreed to carry. These were not simple lovers' secrets, but heavy burdens that pressed down on her even when Elvis was not around. She cared for him deeply and wanted to protect him. But the closeness they shared came with a price. She was no longer just living her own life. She was living inside his, guarding pieces of him that could never see daylight. Linda stayed by his side through sleepless nights and unpredictable days. She appeared with him at events, smiling for the cameras, looking happy, but inside she held truths that no one else knew. The life that looked glamorous from the outside was far more complicated within. She had thought being with Elvis would mean love, happiness, and companionship. Instead, it meant secrecy, responsibility, and sacrifice. The moment Elvis first confided in her marked a turning point. What began as a simple connection in a darkened theater had become something much deeper and more disturbing. Linda was bound to him not just by affection, but by the secrets he had placed in her hands. She would come to understand that being close to Elvis Presley was both a blessing and a burden. The secret he asked her to keep would shape their relationship and follow her for years to come, kept in the dark. The nights at Graceland stretched slowly into morning. Most people imagined Elvis Presley living in a world of spotlights, screaming fans, and constant celebration. Linda Thompson saw something entirely different. She saw the man when the crowds disappeared, when the music stopped, and when his carefully built walls came down. It was during those lonely hours that Elvis revealed the truth he desperately needed to hide from everyone else. Elvis almost never went to bed early. He stayed awake with his close friends, the group people called the Memphis Mafia. They watched movies together, told stories, and filled the rooms with laughter until sunrise. But when the noise faded and the others left, Elvis often asked Linda to stay behind. Sometimes he walked back and forth across the floor. Other times he lay in bed staring at the ceiling as though searching for answers there. In those moments, Linda began to understand the depth of his private battle. He told her that something inside him felt out of control. He admitted that he carried an urge he could not fight, an impulse that pushed him closer to the edge every day. He did not always say it directly, but Linda understood what he meant. She saw the pill bottles lined up on his nightstand. She noticed how he reached for them whenever his body felt tired or his mind restless. He used prescription medication not just to ease pain, but to escape from everything pressing down on him. At first, Linda wanted to believe this was temporary. She told herself he was simply exhausted from years of performing and traveling. She convinced herself that the pills were just medicine prescribed by doctors. But night after night, she watched the pattern continue. He leaned on those pills more and more. He fought exhaustion, sleeplessness, and pressure by swallowing handfuls of capsules. Sometimes he drifted into such a heavy sleep that Linda sat watching his chest rise and fall, terrified it might suddenly stop. It was not just a case of listening to someone share their feelings. It was about witnessing a man fight a battle he refused to let the world see. Linda realized she was being pulled into a secret far bigger than she had imagined. Elvis begged her to stay quiet, to protect him from judgment, from the media, from betrayal. Linda agreed, even though worry was eating away at her from the inside. Linda spent countless hours sitting up with him, watching as he tried to find peace. She handed him water. She adjusted his pillows. She simply stayed close so he would not feel alone. He sometimes told her she was the only person who truly understood him. He called her his safe place, the one person holding him steady. Linda wanted to believe she could be that for him forever. But every time she promised to keep silent, the weight of that promise grew heavier on her shoulders. The burden of the secret bled into her daily life. When friends asked how Elvis was doing, Linda gave light, cheerful answers. When family members questioned his health, she smiled and brushed their concerns away. She learned to cover for him, to explain his tiredness or his sudden shifts in mood. She knew the truth, but locked it deep inside because she had given him her word. There were moments when Linda wanted to break down and cry, but she could not. Elvis needed her to be strong. He needed her to hold him together, so she stayed by his side even when it tore her apart. In private, she tried to reason with him. She suggested he could find healthier ways to rest and recover. Sometimes he nodded and even promised to try, but the habit was stronger than her words. The bottles kept reappearing, filled and refilled, like a cycle spinning endlessly without a break. Linda knew that other people in his circle saw pieces of the truth, but no one spoke openly about it. His fame shielded him. His money made it easy to find doctors and refill prescriptions. She felt isolated, carrying more of his hidden world than anyone else. This was the secret she held. Elvis Presley, the man adored by millions, was trapped in a tough dependence on prescription pills, caught in a cycle he could not admit to the world. Still, Elvis kept reminding her not to reveal anything. He would look at her with intense, pleading eyes and say that if people knew, they would destroy him. He feared being judged. He feared being seen as weak or broken. He leaned on her loyalty and she gave it even when it shattered her heart. Linda, young and devoted, carried that truth for him, locking it inside while she tried to love him through the darkness. Carrying Elvis's secret bound Linda to him in ways she could not have imagined. She became the keeper of truths he could not share with the world. While the outside saw wealth and fame, Linda held the hidden side that no one else could understand. This duty created a strong bond between them, but it also created a crushing burden. The secret became the invisible thread running through their years together, shaping every choice Linda made and reminding her constantly of the cost of loving someone like Elvis Presley. Walking away. The longer Linda Thompson stayed with Elvis Presley, the more she felt the secret she carried seep into every corner of their relationship. What had started as a deep connection slowly became something much harder to bear. At first, Linda believed her love could balance everything. She was young, full of hope, and willing to sacrifice whatever it took. She told herself that if she remained loyal, if she stood firmly by his side, then everything would eventually fall into place. But as months stretched into years, the cracks in their relationship became impossible to ignore. Life with Elvis was never predictable. He rarely followed normal hours or routines. Some nights overflowed with laughter, music, and pure joy. He would sit at the piano singing softly while Linda listened, her heart full. In those moments, he felt warm, open, and genuinely tender. But the mood could shift the next minute. He might withdraw completely, becoming lost inside his own thoughts. Linda learned to read every signal in his voice, in the expression on his face, in the way he moved. She adjusted, reshaping herself around his moods. The secrecy surrounding his private struggles created a growing distance between them. Linda often felt she was holding a part of him that no one else could reach. This closeness initially made her feel chosen and special, but over time it transformed into isolation. She wanted him to open up to others, to seek help beyond what she alone could offer, but he refused. She became stuck with truths he could not share with anyone else, and that responsibility placed significant strain on their bond. Arguments began to creep into their relationship. They were not always loud or explosive, but they were very frustrating. Linda wanted stability and a partner she could build a real future with. She longed for marriage, for children, for something solid. Elvis, however, seemed trapped in a place that left little room for those dreams. His fame demanded constant attention. His habits controlled their nights. The secret he had placed in Linda's hands built an invisible wall she could not break through. There were moments when Linda tried to bring up her own needs. She would tell him gently that she wanted a normal life someday, a family of her own. Elvis would listen, sometimes even nod in agreement, but his answers always drifted back to his own struggles. Slowly, Linda realized that her dreams were slipping further away with every single day she stayed. Friends around them began to notice the tension. Some saw how tired Linda looked, how she seemed older than her years. The imbalance between them grew clearer as time passed. Linda often felt more like a caretaker than a romantic partner. She spent several nights making sure he was safe, adjusting to his shifting moods, and covering for him in front of others. She loved him deeply, but the weight of responsibility overshadowed the romance they had once shared. She was there, physically standing by his side, but emotionally she was drifting further and further away. The secrecy also created mistrust between them. Elvis sometimes became suspicious, wondering if Linda had spoken to anyone about his struggles. He never wanted the outside world to know what was happening behind closed doors. Even though Linda reassured him constantly, promising that she had stayed completely silent, the doubt still lingered in his eyes. That doubt slowly chipped away at their bond, making her feel as though her loyalty would never be enough. By 1976, Linda's endurance had reached a breaking point. She still loved Elvis, but she could no longer ignore the impact their relationship was having on her own spirit. She felt trapped between loyalty and survival. Every time she thought about leaving, guilt rushed in and stopped her. She did not want to abandon him. She did not want to be the person who walked away when he needed her most. Yet she also knew she could not continue living this way forever. Finally, one day, the breaking point arrived. There was no explosive fight or dramatic scene. It was a slow realization that had been building over many months. Linda saw clearly that Elvis's life was moving in one direction and hers in another. He was consumed by patterns he could not escape, and she was yearning for a future he could not give her. Leaving would not mean she stopped caring about him. It would mean saving what remained of herself. One evening, after another long and draining night, Linda sat alone in her room. She thought about her age, about the years she had already given, and about the life she still hoped to build. She knew then that she had to step away. When she finally told Elvis she was leaving, the words came out with sadness, not anger. She explained that she needed a life of her own, one where she was not just tied to secrets and suffering. Elvis listened patiently, but he did not fight her decision. Deep down, he seemed to understand, and so their separation marked the end of a chapter filled with both love and heavy burden. For Linda, it was a release from the heaviness of secrecy, but it also left her carrying memories that would never fade. The consequences of their relationship had changed her, reshaped her future, and left a mark that time could never erase. The end came with the truth that love alone was no longer enough to hold them together, falling off the edge. No matter how much attention surrounded Elvis Presley, he never truly adjusted to it. From the very beginning, he tried to maintain control over his private world. He chose carefully who could step close to him, and when someone did enter his inner circle, they had to follow his rules without question. That was how it had been with Linda Thompson. And when Ginger Alden entered his life in late 1976, she quickly learned she would have to live the same way. He made sure she pulled away from people he did not trust or want around. In late November of 1976, only a few days after meeting Elvis, Ginger found herself standing in a San Francisco hotel room facing something she could not really understand. One of Elvis's aides walked in and placed a small packet in his hand. Without pausing to think, Elvis swallowed the contents and told her it would help him fall asleep. The next morning, another packet appeared. Elvis explained it away as nothing serious, just vitamins, sinus pills, and aspirin mixed together for convenience. To Ginger, the way it was handled felt strange. No one at Graceland seemed to think much of it. The people around him acted as though this was perfectly normal. But inside, Ginger felt something was not right. And it wasn't long before she started to notice more troubling signs. One night, she stood nearby while an aide helped Elvis shuffle slowly to the bathroom and then led him back to bed. She watched closely, unable to shake the thought that the yellow packets held far more than what Elvis had described. Her worry grew deeper when she watched him perform during a show that December. On stage, he stumbled over parts of his own lyrics. That surprised her completely. She started to think that the pills or perhaps some kind of pain relief he was taking might be affecting his memory. What troubled her even more was how these sleep packets followed him absolutely everywhere. Whether he was at home, on the road, or even before a performance, they never left his side. At first, Ginger told herself not to interfere, but as weeks rolled by, she could no longer pretend nothing was wrong. His moods shifted without warning, from lighthearted laughter to sharp anger or sudden emotional distance. She began to believe that the substances he leaned on day after day were behind his instability. One day, when Elvis asked for more medication, Ginger finally spoke up. She told him he did not need it. Still, Elvis tried to make her believe he could not function without it, that he needed it just to keep going. Hearing that, Ginger did not push any further. Still, she thought deeply about what was happening. Maybe Elvis had been taking these pills so often that his body no longer reacted the same way. Maybe that was why he needed stronger doses each time. She could only hope that the medical team around him was managing it properly. After they had been together for 6 months, her concern only got worse. Another tour was coming up, and Elvis, as usual, felt anxious. When he could not fall asleep, he reached out again for the small packets. Ginger began to see a clearer pattern emerging. It was not only about sleepless nights anymore, it was about something that could change him in ways he might not even notice. She could see how the substances influenced every part of him. His reactions, his energy, even the way he moved through daily life, it all seemed different. She tried to bring up her worries in soft, gentle ways, but to no avail. No matter what she said, it felt like she did not have the power to break through his shield. Then the day that struck her hardest finally arrived. She received a phone call and rushed immediately to Graceland. When she stepped into Elvis's room, she froze in place. He lay stretched out on the bed with his eyes shut, an IV drip hooked into his arm. She was told that Elvis had collapsed after taking too much medication. Watching him in that fragile, weakened state tore something deep inside her, yet she still did not know how to stop the cycle spinning around him. Months later, on the morning of August 16, 1977, the weight of it all fell on her in a way she would never forget. Elvis had trouble resting and called for his first packet just before 7 in the morning. Ricky Stanley brought it up to him. An hour later, Elvis was still not settled, so he called for another. Ricky came again, handing him a second packet without hesitation. Ginger stirred slightly as Elvis rose from the bed. He picked up a book, saying he wanted to read in the bathroom for a while. She rolled back over and drifted into sleep once more. Hours later, she opened her eyes to find the sun already high in the afternoon sky. She called out for Elvis, but there was no answer. What she found when she walked into the bathroom would haunt her forever. That turned out to be the last time she had seen him alive. The memory of those final months stayed with Ginger Alden forever, not just as a companion to Elvis Presley, but as someone who had watched him drift further and further from himself day by day. She had witnessed the cycle, seen the packets appear again and again, and felt powerless to stop what was happening. The morning of August 16 became the end of everything, the moment when the pattern finally broke in the most devastating way possible. Forever loyal. After Linda Thompson walked away from her life with Elvis Presley, the world outside felt both lighter and lonelier. For years, her days and nights had revolved completely around him. Every sound, every step, every plan had been tied directly to his way of living. When she left, all of that suddenly stopped. At first, the silence deeply troubled her. She would wake in the night expecting to hear footsteps, laughter, or a voice calling her name. Instead, there was nothing but her own breath. Freedom gave her space to breathe again, but it also forced her to face memories she had kept locked tightly inside. Linda had carried secrets that belonged to Elvis, things no one else knew in full. Even after leaving him, she felt obligated to keep those secrets. She told herself that keeping them hidden was still an act of love, even though their romance was over. That loyalty never left her, no matter how much time passed. The years moved forward, but Linda found that Elvis remained with her in many ways. She heard his music everywhere she went, on the radio, in restaurants, even drifting from cars passing on the street. Each song pulled her back to moments they had shared together, both joyful and unbearably heavy. Sometimes the memories brought a gentle smile to her face. Other times they carried a sharp ache that took her breath away. When Elvis passed away in August of 1977, the news completely shattered her. Even though they had parted ways, she had always hoped he might find balance, that he might overcome the struggles that had weighed him down so heavily. His passing felt like a door closing forever on a part of her life that no one else could truly understand. She grieved not only for him as a man, but also for the years they had shared in secrecy. After his passing, people constantly turned to Linda, hoping she would reveal details about what life with Elvis had really been like. Friends, reporters, and fans all had questions they wanted answered. Some wanted gossip and scandal. Others wanted truth and understanding. Linda, however, remained extremely careful. She chose her words with great caution. She wanted to honor his memory, not expose his pain to the world. The darkest parts of his life, the very things he had begged her to keep hidden, stayed locked inside her for many years. In private, Linda often reflected deeply on what their time together had taught her. She realized that love can be a gift and a burden at the same time. With Elvis, she had learned devotion, patience, and sacrifice. But she had also learned what it took to carry too much for another person. Her own voice, her own needs, had often been buried completely under the weight of his struggles. After leaving, she promised herself that she would never lose her own life so completely inside someone else's world again. She began to rebuild her life from the ground up, Linda stepped into her own career, worked on her own creative projects, and built relationships that allowed her to stand as her own person. However, Elvis's shadow was never far away. She knew that no matter what she accomplished, people would always ask about him first. For many, she would forever be linked to the king of rock and roll. As the years passed slowly, Linda grew more open in sharing her story. She wrote about her experiences, gave interviews, and spoke with honesty about the man she had loved so deeply. But even then, she remained discreet about what she revealed. She shared enough to paint a picture of her life with him, but she also protected the most painful truths. The darkest secret, the one he had made her promise to keep, remained guarded inside her heart for decades. Her reflection on those years carried both pride and sorrow. She was proud that she had stood by him during a time when he desperately needed someone to trust. She was proud that she had been strong enough to leave when her own life depended on it. But she also carried sorrow for the man behind the fame, the one who struggled with battles few people could see. Linda often said that Elvis was not just an icon or a legend. He was human, flawed, vulnerable, and in need of care. That human side, hidden from the world, was the side she had truly loved. Looking back across the years, she realized that keeping those secrets had shaped who she became. They had taught her about loyalty, about inner strength, and about the heavy price of silence. She sometimes wondered what might have happened if Elvis had shared more openly, if he had allowed others to carry the weight with him. But those questions had no answers now. What remained was her story, one of love, sacrifice, and deep reflection. Even decades later, when she spoke about Elvis, her voice often softened noticeably. The memories had not faded with time. The music, the laughter, the pain, all of it stayed close. Time moved forward, but the past was never far behind. For Linda, reflection was not about regret or bitterness. It was about understanding that her life had been forever marked by the years she spent with him, and by the secret he had asked her to keep. Time gave her perspective, but never erased the past completely. Do you think Elvis Presley would have lived longer if he had opened up to the world? Let us know your views in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe to this channel. Before you go, watch the other videos on your screen.